Hello friends, welcome to the last part of the Nc3 sideline where we are going to deal with the move d4. Now amongst three replies, d4 is the most critical one, and when we play the move d5, white has three good choices. In one rapid game where my opponent was 2000 plus rated, he responded with the move f3, which is in fact a good move. Here I am recommending that you should capture the e4 pawn. And now in the view of d4 pawn is hanging, white response is forced, white has to play the move d5, and afterwards we are going to play the move knight to e5. Knight to e5 create a nasty trap. If your opponent plays this attacking looking move, that is queen to d4, then white can get into the big trouble after the move e captures f3. The main reason is when white captures the piece, black has this amazing stunner, that is f2 check. Kindly note king cannot capture the pawn because of the knight fork. So king d1 looks obvious move. Afterwards black will capture his piece back, and after rook captures, black has this attacking move e6. And I think it's only black who is having all the fun in this line. So that's why queen to d4 is not possible at this point. That means white has to capture the pawn. Afterwards, I'm recommending that you should put the knight immediately on the g6. The idea is very simple. We want to undermine the white center as quickly as possible. The game continues with the move knight to f3, and e5 is the move which not only restrict white activity, but it will allow black to develop his all piece very freely. My opponent responded with the move bishop to g5, pinning my knight. I responded with bishop to b4, pinning his knight. And then he exchanged his light square bishop, which is in fact his bad bishop, and plays the move queen to d3. So his idea is very clear. You just want to remain flexible, and depending on the black responses, he can go either short or the long castle. Well, I immediately remove all the possibility with the move bishop captures knight. It's very obvious that queen cannot capture the c3, so my opponent has to forcefully capture with the b pawn. Afterwards, I responded with the move knight to h5. Now, as we've seen in other lines, if knight to f4 has been allowed, then black obtain an amazing position. So, opponent understanding that, he stopped it with the move g3. I responded with the move h6, and he dropped his bishop back to the e3. Now, both sides castle. Well, you can easily see the major difference in terms of king security, as white king has some weakened light square around his territory. So I tried to exploit that immediately with the move queen to g4. My opponent responded with the move rook to b1. I hit his queen with the move knight to f4. When queen placed on the c4, I responded with the move b6. Taking the c7 pawn will be very risky. So knowing that, my opponent responded with the move rook b to d1. I responded with the typical attacking plan, that is knight to h3 check, king to h1, and now the move f4, which at first sight looks very risky, especially when my opponents played the move d6 check, king to h7, and now d captures c7. But it's all good. After the move rook to c8, black doesn't have to worry about the c7 pawn right now. It has his own attack going on the king side. White responded here with the move a4, so his idea is to undermine the pawn chain, but it's little bit late because my king side activity coming into the picture immediately after the move f4. After some calculation, he captured my pawn, I capture with the knight, and now there's a checkmate on g1, so he captured my dangerous knight, and after some thinking, I capture with the rook, which at first sight looks very dangerous after my opponent's next move, that is rook to d1. So idea is to capturing the rook, or maybe queen to g8 check. But trust me, I have worked all this out, and I played a cold-blooded move, that is rook captures f3, allowing this queen to g8 check, king to g6. I know I have to do a king dance, but my king will be very safe soon. So he continued with the move queen to e8 check, king to g5, queen captures e5, and now finally king to h4, and the king is quite safe there. That means white has to deal with the checkmate threat of rook captures f1. Again, after a long thinking, he come out with the only good move, that is rook back to the d1. But now the task become very easy. I give you a few seconds. Can you identify a move which will confirm black victory? Okay, I hope you find this move, that is rook captures c7. I think he was in time trouble and he immediately captured my rook, which leads to the disaster after the move order. Rook captures rook, rook captures rook, and now queen captures e4, which is unavoidable checkmate. So that was one model game which will highlight the plans black can adopt against the move f3. The second move I want to consider is e captures d5. Afterwards, black has to certainly capture this pawn. And now, as I have highlighted, white has three different choices. Amongst them, bishop to b5 is not a good one once again. The simple reason is there will be a transposition of the line, which we have already looked at it in knight to f3 variation, where here black will continue with the move knight captures knight, bishop captures knight, b captures c6, b captures c3, and now the trademark move queen to d5. If knight to f3, then bishop to g4 is a very strong move. White will get another set of double pawn. So only independent move over here is queen to f3, but this is actually a dubious move. The simple reason is black can stop white to castle on the king side with the move bishop to a6, and after the move bishop to a3, which looks like stopping black's development, but black bishop can develop on other diagonals, so that is g6. Idea is to play bishop g7 and castle on the king side. And in order to complete his development, the best move suggested by Engine is exchanging the queen, which is obviously a very good choice for the black. So straight away you can say this line is not at all good for the white. The second move I want to consider is knight to f3. Well, after this, I'm recommending that you should play the move bishop to f5, and the planning is as usual. So we want to play the move e6, bishop to e7, castle on the king side, and then at the right time look out for the move c5. If white plays bishop d3, we can exchange this bishop and then continue with our plan. So no issues with this. So the only independent move over here is bishop to b5. Well, against this, I'm recommending that you should continue with the move e6, allowing the move knight to e5. Black has a very strong reply, that is knight captures c3. Has to capture this knight, and afterwards we are going to play the move queen to d5, attacking two spots. Now in one blitz game, my opponent come out with this attacking looking move, that is c4, but the problem is after queen captures g2, rook to f1, and bishop to b4, white is busted. The simple reason is after bishop to d2, black has this lethal check, that is queen to e4, that will more or less stamp the victory. The game continues with the move queen to e2. Afterwards I capture the bishop, and after king recapture I simply capture the c2 pawn, and after few moves white resign. So it's already a resignable position. So c4 or a4 are not good at this point. The best move over here is bishop capture knight. Afterwards we are capturing with the b pawn, and now white has to castle on the king side. But if this is the best white can have it, then black can easily dissolve his double pawn via the move order c5. A sample line can run like this. If bishop to a3, then the simplest is you play the move bishop to d6, protecting your bishop and the same time hitting the knight. So knight has to drop back to the f3. Afterwards we can simply get rid of our weak pawns, that is c captures d4, bishop captures bishop, pawn captures, and rook to c8. It is only white who has to defend his backward pawns, and black will enjoy the attacking. So that was about knight to f3. The third move white can try is bishop to c4. But after this move, if you want, you can go back to the line which I have recommended earlier, that is knight to b6 and bishop to f5. But especially against this setup, I think knight captures c3 is a very strong move. The simple reason is when white recapture the knight, then you can play this amazing move, that is e5. Obviously white cannot capture the pawn, so he has to complete his king side development with the move knight to f3. Afterwards, we are going to capture the d pawn, and when white recapture, we can complete our kingside piece development with the move bishop to b4 check, bishop to d2, bishop captures bishop, queen captures, castle on the king side, and white cannot castle here. White has to play the move d5. The problem with the move castle is black can immediately respond with the move bishop to g4, hitting the knight, which is giving protection to the d4 square, and if it's not defended, then the white pawns will be double on the king side. So for example, if queen to e3, then the simplest is bishop captures knight, queen captures knight, and now queen captures d4 with a clear pawn advantage and attacking position. So white has to respond here with the move d5. Afterwards, we get a very comfortable game with the move order rook to e8 check, bishop to e2, knight to e5, castle on the king side, and then very simple is queen d6, rook e1, and bishop to d7. Even though it looks like the position is equal, but the problem with the white position is it has a hanging pawn which can be easily targeted. So for example, if c4, then b6, then black can train his all piece to attack these hanging pawns. So we can easily conclude over here that amongst all these three moves, black can obtain more than a comfortable game. So let's look at the most critical move, that is e5. Well, here black has to play the only move, that is knight to e4. And now once again white has four different choices. Amongst them, knight captures e4 is the main move, but let's look at the sideline first. The first move I want to consider is bishop to d3, which is a dubious move. The simple refutation is you can capture this pawn, and after the following sequence, that is knight captures knight, pawn captures, bishop captures, bishop to f5, bishop captures, knight captures, queen captures, and rook captures. Yes, the position is equal, but I strongly prefer black. The simple reason is it has already developed a two piece, and this pawn on e5 sometimes become a very good target. Now other moves white has is knight moves. So for example, knight to e2 or knight to f3. Against this, remember the golden rule that if knight goes to the e2, then you place your bishop on f5, and if the knight goes to the f3, then you place your bishop on the g4, and that way you get a very comfortable game. Okay, let's see knight to e2 first. If knight g to e2, obviously we are going to play the move bishop to f5, and the whole idea of knight to e2 is to play the move f3 and dislodging the knight. Well, no matter, we are exchanging the pair of knight, and now we play the move e6. Now here white has to be very careful. If white casually develops his king side bishop, for example bishop to d3, then after queen to h4 check, g3, and queen captures d4, black obtain a pawn advantage. So the more normal move over here is bishop to e3. Afterwards, we are straight away undermining this pawn chain with the move f6. This is a case of one of my rapid game where my opponent responded with the move e captures f6. I responded with the move queen captures f6. He developed his king side piece with the move bishop to b5. I played bishop to d6. He castled on the king side, and I did the same. And we should stop over here. It's very easy to see that not only black has these wonderful bishops, but it has an open f file, where if you look at white pieces, they all looks very clumsy. This bishop is out of the play, so is this knight, and what this bishop is doing on e3? Nothing. So black has a wonderful attacking position. The third move white can try is knight to f3, but as usual we are going to play the move bishop to g4. And now the usual line continues with the move bishop to e2, e6, castle on the king side, bishop to e7, h3, bishop to f5, a3, castle on the king side, bishop to e3, and now very much familiar plan. Yep, you got it. It's knight captures c3, b captures c3, and knight to a5. Planning is to play the move c5 as quickly as possible and get a very comfortable game. So let's look at the main line where white captures the knight. After knight captures and pawn captures, white's idea is to play the move c3, and this move is very much justified because not only this knight is misplaced, but this pawn is a clear target for the white. Well, that's the downside. The good side is it's not easy to capture this pawn, and you will see in upcoming games that to get this pawn, white has to pay a heavy price. The move I'm going to recommend is you play the move g6, which is a quite unknown territory and not many white players will feel comfortable about it. And to understand this, I want to show you 3 different games where white tried different kind of setups and all miserably fails. So in the first game, my opponent responded with the move bishop to b5. I responded with the move bishop to d7, and now he played the move queen to e2. So as usual, targeting the e4 pawn. No matter, I played the move a6, and here if bishop goes to the c4, then knight to a5 is a very strong move. So my opponent responded here with the move bishop to a4, but this is a typical trap where capture the e5 pawn. If d captures e5, then bishop captures bishop. So the obvious move is bishop captures bishop. Afterwards we are going to save our knight with knight captures d7. The following line continues with the move queen captures e4, attacking b7, but after c6, knight to f3, bishop to g7, castle on the king side and castle on the king side, I think black is very comfortably placed. The game continues with the move rook to e1, attacking the e7. I defended with the move rook to e8, and now he played the move bishop to g5. So you can see this is one of the most aggressive line in the setup. Well, no matter, we can do a counter attack with the move queen to b6. My opponent defended here with the move queen to c2. Afterwards, the typical break in the center, yup, it's e5. The game continues with the move d captures e5, and knight captures e5, and knight captures e5, bishop captures e5, and rook to d1. It looks like white is doing very good, but after black's next move, that is queen to e5, if white is not careful, then he's about to lose a pawn. In the game, he tried to defend with the move a3, but he completely missed my next shot, that is bishop captures h2, king captures h2, rook captures rook, rook captures rook, and queen captures g5, not only regaining a piece, but emerge with a clear pawn advantage. In the second game, my opponent tried the obvious looking move, that is bishop to e3. His idea is when I play the move bishop to g7, he wants to play the move queen to d2, castle on the queen side, and then quickly launch a devastating attack on my king. Well, first of all, I stop him castling on the queen side via the move queen to d5. And now if white respond with the move knight to e2, then there will be a transposition of the knight to e2 line. So the another independent move which my opponent try over here is c4. Against this, I'm recommending that you should definitely exchange the queen with the move queen to a5. The simple reason is after queen captures and knight captures, we are going to undermine this pawn chain with the move c5. The game continues with the move b4. So my opponent is gaining tremendous space on the queen side. No matter, it's not as dangerous as it looks. I calmly played knight to c6. He became more aggressive with the move b4, which is a minor mistake. I come back again with the move knight to a5, and now he played the move rook to c1. So his idea is to develop his knight to the e2, so the c4 pawn doesn't hang. Well, in certain condition, you have to play your typical break, and that is what I played over here. The move is c5, quickly undermining the white pawn chain. After a long thinking, my opponent captured this pawn with n%, and I recapture with the knight. He continued with the move knight to e2. I responded with the move bishop to f5. He played the move knight to g3, and now the move of the game, that is castle on the queen side. I think at this point he realized that he is in a danger of losing this game. The simple reason is d4 pawn will be a goner in the long run. He continued with the move rook to d1, and I follow a very simple plan. I just want to double up my rook on the d file. Seeing that he can no way defend on d4 pawn, he come out with the following move order. He played knight captures bishop, and after pawn captures, he played the move h3. My opponent's idea was that when I try to get the d pawn with the rook to d8 idea, then he can hit back my f5 pawn with the move g4. No matter, I continue with the move bishop captures e5. He played g captures f5, and after the following move order, bishop captures bishop, bishop captures bishop, knight captures bishop, he responded with the move bishop to g2. In fact, is a big blunder. Before we go on, I want you to pause this position and find out a continuation which can give winning edge to the black. Okay, I hope you find this move, that is e3. Tremendous move. Thing is, when white recaptures the pawn, you have this amazing sequence starting with the move knight to c2 check, king to e2, rook captures rook, rook captures rook, rook captures rook, and when finally king captures the piece, then we have this lethal check which will grab the piece. The last and the final aggressive move has been played is knight to e2, which has a very simple idea that when you played the move bishop to g7, white respond with the move knight to g3. So straight away concentrating on the weak e4 square. Well, no matter, we can easily defend this pawn with the move queen to d5. My opponent responded with the move queen to c2, attacking one more time, and I defended one more time with the move bishop to f5. So as I told you earlier, it's very hard for white to get this pawn. My opponent continued here with the move bishop to e3, and I responded very energetically with the move f6. It's very important for black to undermine the white pawn chain before white develop his all piece. He captured on f6, I recapture with the bishop. In the view of queen captures a2, my opponent cannot castle on the queen side. So he switches plan and goes back on the king side with the move order bishop to e2. Now watching white is playing very passive moves, I decided to raise the war flag with the move castle on the queen side. My opponent happily accepted, so he castles short, and now I put my king on the b8, so very safe. He get aggressive with the move b4, which is a very natural, throwing pawn storms. No matter, I continue with the move e5, hitting in the center, and here he made a critical error. He played the move b5, which turns out very bad for him. I continue with the move e captures d4, and now he made the second mistake by playing the move rook f to d1. It's okay spinning that pawn, but the major problem is now black has this amazing resource, that is queen to c5, pinning the c3 pawn, and the same time creating a threat of capturing the bishop. White doesn't have anything left except capturing the knight. Afterwards, I capture his bishop, and the game continues with the move knight captures f5, pawn captures f2, king to f1, and finally capturing a piece. So you can already see after all these moves, black obtained a very good position. It has a threatening pawns in the center. Seeing that, my opponent tried to get rid of some major piece, so he exchanged a pair of rooks and offered the second one, which I happily accepted. And after that, I just captured the c6 pawn. It's okay, white can grab the f2 pawn, but after queen captures c3, white has a huge problems. Seeing nothing better, my opponent tried to exchange some queen trade, but after bishop to d4 check, king to f1, and queen to e3, white is almost on the verge of losing the game. He tried bishop h5, but this is not sufficient. Queen check, and now simple but very effective move, queen captures h2, and he just resigned at this point. That's all, folks. I hope with this wonderful analysis you can confidently meet the move d4. Well, thank you for watching this, and I meet you in my next sideline episode, that is d3. Bye.